we'll discuss about protein biosynthesis. What are the bottlenecks, right? So this is the usual disclaimer that this presentation is made only for the student of life sciences and it should not be used for any other purpose, copied or posted on any site without my permission. And some of the pictures in the presentations have been taken from the public domain website so as to make this whole thing simpler, easier to understand for all of you. And the credit nevertheless goes to the original publisher. Now, we have been saying this, that translation is the difficult process. Okay, so you need to have I've been saying this for long, that translation is the most difficult process, complex process, for a simple reason that, for the first time, the language changes, the medium changes. The language, it changes from the language of nucleotides to the language of amino acids. So this simple thing makes the whole thing a pretty complex one. And therefore you need to have an adapter. So by now you are familiar what is meant by an adapter. So tRNA, functions as an adapter. Similarly, I told you in the first lecture that peptide bond formation during protein biosynthesis is thermodynamically unfavorable. So nature has overcome this particular bottleneck by pre-activating the amino acids. The amino acids, they are pre-activated. They are pre-activated. Okay, before they participate in protein biosynthesis, that is peptide bond formation, they are pre-activated. So these are the two bottlenecks. So in today's lecture, in next 30 minutes, we'll try and understand in detail what are the structural features of the tRNA which acts as a translation adapter. And the second is how these amino acids are activated. Now, tRNA acts as a translation adapter. So by now you are familiar with this because it recognizes both amino acid at one end and the mRNA at the other end. Means it can recognize the codon which is present on the mRNA on one end by an anticodon it has, and at the other end, it carries a charged amino acids. So we'll see in detail in this lecture itself how it is done. So all known tRNAs in the bacterial cell, in the prokaryotes, they have certain common features. Okay, and what are those common features? So they are pretty small molecules. They are single chain containing, why I'm saying small, containing anywhere between 73 to 93 nucleotides only. Okay, so, by the nucleic acid standard, this is really, really small. So they are made up of something like, 100 odd nucleotides. Another characteristic feature is that they contain many unusual bases. Typically what we have seen is that RNA has got A, U, G and C. But this tRNA has got quite a few modified bases. What is the percentage? The percentage is anywhere between 7 to 15%. Pretty high percentage of modified bases. What are those modified bases? They are usually methylated or dimethylated derivatives of the 4 commonly occurring bases. These are the 4 commonly occurring bases: A, U, C, and G. And those modified bases are nothing but they are the methylated or dimethylated derivatives of these 4 common bases. So for example, you may have dihydroxyuridine, ribothymidine, pseudouridine, methylguanosine. These are the names, some of the names of the modified bases in the tRNA. Please understand the 5' end. So like any other RNA molecule or nucleic acid molecule, it has got a 5' end and it has got a 3' end. So the 5' end is phosphorylated. 5' end will have a phosphate group and obviously 3' end will have an hydroxyl group. So it will have a 5' end will have a phosphate here. The terminal nucleotide at the 5' end is usually a G. Please remember, tRNAs at the 5' end will have a G and that G is phosphorylated. right? Very important, it's a characteristic feature of the tRNA that at the 5' end it is phosphorylated and it has got a G over there. The base sequence at the 3' end, is always CCA. This is another important feature. Always you will find the terminal residue, terminal nucleotide at the 3' end is always an A, and it is preceded by a C, and it is preceded by another C. So the base sequence at the 3' end is always, invariably, without exception, is a CCA. Okay, and where does the amino acid gets esterified? The amino acid gets esterified, it is carried to either 2-hydroxyl group or 3-hydroxyl group of the ribose of the terminal A at the 3' end. So you got a over here, it has got a either 2-hydroxyl group, which is free ribose, or 3-hydroxyl group, and the amino acid is esterified either to 2-hydroxyl group of the ribose or 3-hydroxyl group of the ribose of the terminal A. Please remember, I am repeating it once again, that at the 3' end you will have a sequence CCA, means the last nucleotide at the 3' end is always going to be an A. The first nucleotide at the 5' end is always going to be a G. And this A, which will have the 2-hydroxyl group of the ribose free and the 3-hydroxyl group of the ribose free, it will carry an amino acid esterified either to 2-hydroxyl group or to 3-hydroxyl group. Another important feature of the tRNA is that tRNA has got a lot of internal complementarity, means lot of regions in the tRNA, though it is very small molecule, within that small molecule itself, you have regions which are self-complementary. Means when the tRNA, which is a linear molecule, gets an opportunity, those complementary regions, they will try and base pair. Okay, therefore, half of it, as a result of that, because of the internal complementarity, it remains, half of it remains base paired. I'll be showing you a diagram and then you'll understand. And when it gets base paired, because of the internal complementarity, the shape that it acquires, it looks like the leaf of a plant, clover leaf plant. So it looks like the leaf of a clover. When it acquires the shape which is similar to the leaf of the clover plant. So we say it clover leaf structure, and that is also called a secondary structure of tRNA. Typically, when it acquires that kind of a structure, there are 4 loops. It forms 4 loops. The first one is called as thymidine pseudouracil cytosine, represented by this. Thymidine pseudouracil, which is a modified base, cytosine loop. This extra arm may or may not be there. There is another loop which is called as extra arm, which may not be there in all the tRNAs, but some of the tRNAs may have. The third loop is DHU loop. It is called as dihydroxyuracil loop. Because why do you call it as DHU loop? Because you have lot of dihydroxyuracil residues in that particular loop. And the fourth one is called as an anticodon loop, where typically it carries an anticodon. The anticodon loop, the base sequence is fairly common. There are 7 bases in the anticodon loop. It is like this, going from 5' end, you will have a pyrimidine, right? You will have a cytosine, or you will have a uracil, or it will be followed by another pyrimidine. And then these 3 anticodon, 3 codons, 3 nucleotides which constitute the anticodon, which is going to be complementary to a particular codon. And then these 3 nucleotides which form an anticodon, they are followed by a modified purine, modified guanosine or modified adenine, and then any nucleotide. So these are the 7 nucleotides. This is 1, this is 2, and then these 3, 5, this is 6, and this is 7. So 7 nucleotides in the anticodon loop, their sequence is fairly common in all the tRNAs. It all begins with the pyrimidine, followed by pyrimidine, then 3 nucleotides which constitute the anticodon, followed by a modified purine, and followed by any nucleotide, going from 5' to 3' direction, right? So let us see this structure of this, and then probably it will be more clear to you. This is the structure that I've taken from the book. So this is the 5' end, it has got a G here, and which is phosphorylated, right? So this is one end, you pull it from one hand on this side, and this is the 3' end. As I said, there is a C, and the last residue is A, which has got a 3-hydroxyl free. Therefore, we call it as a 3' end. So you pull this end in this direction, so it becomes a linear molecule. But as soon as you leave it, because of the internal complementary regions, these are the base paired stems. These are the base paired stem because of the internal complementarity. Okay, these are the base paired stems here. Again, what is not complementary, it loops out. That means the DHE loop, there is no complementarity here. So these 6-7 bases, 6-7 nucleotides, they are looped out. And since you have majority of them dihydroxyuridine, we call it as DHE loop. This is thymidine pseudouracil cytosine loop because you have many of thymidine, pseudouracil, and cytosine amino acid nucleotides in this, and this is the base paired region. Okay, this is the loop. There is no complementarity here. And the most important is, so you have a anticodon loop. This is anticodon loop, and there are 7 nucleotides here. These 3 nucleotides, these 3, they constitute the anticodon. So I told you the sequence also in the pyrimidine followed by anticodon XYZ, followed by a modified purine, followed by any nucleotide. These are the 7 pretty common, constant nucleotides present at the anticodon loop. So this is anticodon loop. And the 4th loop is an extra arm, which may be there, which may not be there, and therefore the word variable. And this typical structure, it looks like the leaf of clover plant, clover leaf. So this is called a secondary structure of tRNA, and because it appears like the leaf of a plant, it is also called as clover leaf structure. Okay. For you, please understand, I cannot show it to you over here in a class. I would have shown you that if you pull this 5' end from one end from your left hand and 3' end from your right hand, it becomes a 19 nucleotide long linear molecule. But because of the complementary regions, internal complementary regions, when you leave those 2 ends, it spontaneously, those complementary region base pairs, and they acquire a typical shape which looks like the leaf of a clover plant. So we call it as clover leaf structure. There is one thing that you must remember. Second, the 5' end is always a G, which is phosphorylated, and the 3' end is always CCA with a free 3-hydroxyl group. It is here that amino acid will be carried. This is called as amino acid attachment site, right? And this is the anticodon loop where you have anticodon. So at one end it carries anticodon, at the other end it carries an amino acid, and therefore it is called as a translation adapter. Now amino acid activation, this is the second bottleneck. Peptide bond formation between amino acids taken directly is thermodynamically unfavorable. So just to make that peptide bond formation following thermodynamic laws, what is done is those amino acids which participate in protein biosynthesis, they are pre-activated. Those amino acids are pre-activated. Now, activated amino acids, therefore they become the building blocks of protein. Activated amino acids or activated building blocks of protein biosynthesis are amino acid esters of tRNA. Where do they bind? They bind to tRNA. I just showed you the side. They get esterified at the 3' end of the tRNA. And the resulting molecule is called as amino acid ester, amino acid derivative of tRNA. Okay. amino acids are esterified either to 2-hydroxyl group or 3-hydroxyl group. I'll be showing you what determines which amino acid will get esterified to 2-hydroxyl and which amino acid will get esterified to 3-hydroxyl group in a short while from now. To the terminal A of the CCA, we have seen what is CCA at the 3' end. This reaction is catalyzed by a specific enzyme, and the name of the enzyme is called as amino acid tRNA synthetase. So for each of the 20 amino acids, you will have a specific amino acid tRNA synthetase. Okay. For glycine, you will have glycinyl tRNA synthetase. For alanine, you will have alanyl tRNA synthetase. For proline, you have proline tRNA synthetase. For phenylalanine, you will have phenylalanine tRNA synthetase, like that. So for those 20 amino acids, for each one of them, you will have one specific amino acid tRNA synthetase. These are specific enzymes. Now this amino acid tRNA synthetase, they were discovered by these two scientists, P. Jamechnik and Hogland, in 1957. Okay, so something like about 65 years back, these amino acid tRNA synthetase were discovered by these two scientists, Jamechnik and Hogland. They are also called as activating enzyme because what they are doing, they are activating the amino acids. And this reaction takes place in 2 steps. Step number 1 is amino acid reacts with, and it requires energy because you are taking those amino acids to the higher energy level. So it requires energy. So energy is provided by ATP. So amino acid plus ATP, what you get an intermediate amino acid AMP. Okay, amino acid gets esterified to the alpha phosphorus atom of the ATP molecule, and PPI molecule is liberated, right? And in the second step, those amino acid AMP reacts with tRNA. Okay, please understand, tRNA should be the one which has an anticodon, okay, for the codon being carried by that amino acid AMP, for the codon of that amino acid, which is going to be charged. Okay, so pretty, what you can say, high level of precision is required. We'll come to that in the later part of this lecture. So in the second step, amino acid AMP generated in the first stage, reacts with tRNA, and what you get is amino acid tRNA. This is called as charged tRNA. Amino acid has been esterified to the 2-hydroxyl or 3-hydroxyl group of the ribose of the terminal adenine at the 3' end, plus AMP will be freed. Okay, it has been shown over here. So you have tRNA which has been drawn upside down. Typically, what do? We draw it like this. This will be the tRNA. But what we have done is we have drawn it upside down. So this is tRNA now. This is anticodon loop. This is anticodon over here, right? This is anticodon here. And this is this C, and A here, 3' end. So this is A. It has got a 2-hydroxyl or 3-hydroxyl free, and amino acid has been esterified here. Amino acid has been esterified here by an ester bond. Amino acid has been charged over here, has been esterified over here. Okay. So this is C, and terminal A. This is A I have drawn over here. This is the rest of the tRNA. Okay. 2-hydroxyl is free and 3-hydroxyl is free. Amino acid can be charged either to this or it can be charged either to this. What determines this will come to in the next slide. So this is how, this is called as charged tRNA. This is called as charged tRNA. This is called as charged tRNA. Amino acid tRNA is also called as charged tRNA because it carries an amino acid esterified to its 2-hydroxyl group. Now, as I said, for each of those 20 standard amino acids, you have to have a specific enzyme which can catalyze this particular reaction. So that means you have something like 20 amino acid tRNA synthetases. For 20 amino acids, you will have 20 tRNA synthetases. And those 20 enzymes have been classified into two groups now, based on their certain features. And what are those features? Those two classes are called as class 1 enzyme, and the second is called as class 2 enzyme. What is class 1 enzyme? Class 1 enzyme, they catalyze activation of amino acid with larger hydrophobic R groups. So amino acids will have R groups. So all of you know. So there is an R group which is variable. Rest of the three things are common. You have a COH here. You have a amino group here. And you have a hydrogen here. This is different in all the amino acids. Amino acids, they differ from one another with respect to this. So class 1 enzyme, they will typically catalyze activation of amino acids where this R group is large one, bulkier one, hydrophobic in nature. Typically, they catalyze activation, esterification at 2-hydroxyl group. Class 1 enzyme will, esterify the amino acid at 2-hydroxyl group. I just told you in the last slide that I'll be making it clear as to which amino acid will get activated, which amino acid will get esterified to 2-hydroxyl, and which amino acid will get esterified to 3-hydroxyl. So class 1 enzyme will catalyze esterification at 2-hydroxyl group. The activation domain of the enzyme, it is made up of parallel beta sheets. Parallel beta sheets are there in this class 1 enzyme. And what are those amino acids which are activated by class 1? They are named over here. So you have arginine, you have cysteine, you have glutamine, you have glutamic acid, isoleucine, leucine, methionine, tryptophan, tyrosine, and valine. These are the 10 amino acids, which are activated by class 1 enzyme. And these are the characteristic feature of class 1 enzyme. What about class 2? They catalyze activation of amino acids with smaller R group, where the R group is small. Glycine, alanine, R group is small. So those amino acids will be activated by class 2, and those amino acids are esterified at 3-hydroxyl group. So over a period of time, we have a good understanding as to which amino acids are esterified at 2-hydroxyl and which amino acids are esterified to 3-hydroxyl group. The amino acid activation domain of the enzyme, it has got anti-parallel beta sheets. Class 1 में parallel था, यहाँ पर जो है anti-parallel, ये difference है, right? And the activated amino acids which are activated by class 2 are, as I said, alanine, asparagine, aspartic acid, glycine, histidine, lysine, phenylalanine, serine, proline, threonine. These 10 amino acids, they are activated by class 2 enzymes. So now you understand which amino acids will be esterified at 2-hydroxyl, which amino acid will be esterified to 3-hydroxyl, what is meant by class 1 enzyme, what is meant by class 2 enzyme. Now, amino acid tRNA synthetases, they have got this additional, what you can say, responsibility to make sure that only the correct amino acid, gets esterified to the tRNA, and because this is the point of no return. If the correct amino acid is not esterified, then whatever has been esterified, right or wrong, it is going to be incorporated into the polypeptide chain. So what nature has done, therefore, nature has provided proofreading activity. These amino acid tRNA synthetases, they have proofreading activity, and as a result of that, the fidelity, the precision, the accuracy of the protein biosynthesis process increases. The error rate is very low. These amino acid tRNA synthetase, they are specific for both. They have to be specific for both. What are the two things? Amino acid that they are esterifying and the corresponding tRNA that they are reacting with. So they need to be specific for both these two. Amino acid that they are activating and the tRNA where they are esterifying the amino acid to. Both these things, this enzyme has to discriminate. Enzyme has to be selective. Discriminating between different tRNA. So you have a pool of tRNAs. Each tRNA is different. So differentiating between tRNAs is relatively easy. Why we are saying so? Because they carry different anticodons. So tRNA can be differentiated from one another because they carry different anticodons. Okay, but discriminating between two similar amino acids which differ with structurally, only there is a minor difference. So discriminating between those two amino acids is quite challenging for the enzyme. Okay, please understand, it has to differentiate, it has to discriminate between among the tRNA, and from the pool of tRNA it has to pick up the correct tRNA, and it has to discriminate among the pool of amino acid, pick up the correct amino acid, and then esterified it to the corresponding tRNA. Okay, for example, one example has been given. Isoleucine, the difference between isoleucine and valine is that isoleucine has got an extra CH2 group than valine. Rest of the structure is same. Isoleucine is valine plus CH2. So it has got an extra methylene group. So now discriminating between these two structurally very similar amino acid is really challenging for the enzyme. And how does it do it? Let us understand that. So as I said, the enzyme has got the proofreading activity. It corrects its own errors. It has got this, and we have seen this proofreading activity earlier also in DNA polymerases. So same kind of activity has been provided here to the amino acid tRNA synthetase also. It can correct its own error. For example, you have an enzyme which is specific for isoleucine. Why I am saying isoleucine? Because there is a superscript here, enzyme superscript isoleucine. So this is isoleucine tRNA synthetase, right? This synthetase is specific for isoleucine. Now, since there is a minor difference between the structure of isoleucine and valine, by mistake, not every time, sometimes even valine may get activated, we have seen that reaction. So you have valine AMP, that is the first reaction, esterified to enzyme specific for isoleucine. Okay. So what this enzyme is doing is, by mistake, instead of activating isoleucine, because this enzyme is specific for isoleucine, sometime because of the close structural similarity, even valine can get activated. In the next step, what happens? tRNA, which is specific for isoleucine, will be coming into the action in the second stage of the reaction. And if it is not stopped here, what is going to happen? That valine, which has been activated, is going to be esterified to tRNA, which is specific for isoleucine. But that does not happen. This enzyme can correct the error. What does it do? It hydrolyzes this valine. This bond is broken. Valine is freed. Valine is not transferred to tRNA, which is meant for isoleucine. And enzyme is also freed. Okay. So this enzyme has got proofreading activity. For example, I have written over here, mistakenly activated valine, it is not transferred to isoleucine tRNA. Rather, valine AMP is hydrolyzed and the synthetase is freed. Synthetase is freed and it will pick up the correct amino acid in the next cycle, isoleucine, will pre-activate it and then esterify it to tRNA meant for isoleucine. How this is achieved? So what is believed is that this enzyme carries two sites. One is an acylation site or activation site. There are two adjacent sites on the enzyme molecule, protein. One is an activation site, which is also called as an acylation site. And next to it, there is an editing site, which is also called as an hydrolytic site. It is also called as an hydrolytic site. Please understand, I am talking about the enzyme. That enzyme, it achieves this proofreading activity and it achieves this particular feat of not transferring a wrong amino acid, by having two neighboring side-by-side sites. What are those sites? One is an activation site or acylation site. This first reaction will take place there in the activation site. And the second one is a hydrolytic site. The second reaction, if needed, will take place at the hydrolytic site. So I tried to show in the next slide. So this is the structure of the protein. What protein we are talking about? We are talking about amino acyl tRNA synthetase. We are talking about amino acyl tRNA synthetase. So this is amino acyl tRNA synthetase. So this is acylation site, and next door, neighboring site is an editing site. Okay. Activation site or acylation site rejects, please understand, rejects amino acids which are larger than the correct one. Okay. Amino acids which are larger than what can fit into this, because this is specific. The enzyme is specific for a given amino acid only. So amino acids which are larger than the specific amino acid in terms of size, they cannot enter this site. It's a pocket, it's a cavity, it's a crevice. It's a three-dimensional entity. Okay, it's a three-dimensional pocket where only the correct amino acid can fit in, right? So all those amino acids which are bigger than the correct one, in the first place, they will be rejected here. They cannot enter. So there is no question of they getting activated. Okay. So activation site doesn't allow anything which is bigger than the correct one to enter the site. But what about the smaller one? Smaller one can enter. So the next door editing site, what does it do? Editing site hydrolyzes amino acids which are smaller than the correct one. So activation site takes care of amino acids which are larger than the correct one, and the editing site takes care of the amino acids which are smaller than the correct one. Smaller one, by mistake, they have entered, they will get activated. But as I said, as I showed you in the previous slide, they will be hydrolyzed here. They will get activated, but they will be hydrolyzed by it's activated, but it will be hydrolyzed in the neighboring hydrolysis site. Editing site, it will hydrolyze the amino acid which are smaller than the correct one. So this complementary pair of sites, activation sites not allowing bigger amino acids than the correct one, and editing site are not allowing anything which is smaller than the correct one, it acts as a double sieve. Sieve means what? There is 1 minute remaining. Sieve means the filter. So it's a double sieve. It ensures that only the correct amino acid gets activated and transferred to the tRNA, and it ensures high fidelity of the reaction, right? Thank you very much.